God bless this family the day Trevon was born. Honestly, Desmond and I sometimes look at each other and say, if only we had just one child. If only we just had him, our lives would be absolutely flawless. My mother, Vivian, projected those exact words through a crystal-clear microphone to a crowd of 300 elite guests. I stood in the shadows near the grand staircase of the rented Buckhead mansion, holding a glass of sparkling water, and watched the room erupt into polite applause. My own mother had just publicly erased my existence at my younger brother's engagement party, and she did it with a diamond-studded smile. I am Selah. I am 32 years old, and for my entire life I have been the dark stain on my family's perfectly curated image. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand quietly in the background while your family treated you like you were invisible. What my mother did not know as she raised her champagne glass to toast her golden boy was that the multi-million-dollar estate she was standing in belonged to a corporate portfolio that I exclusively controlled. She also did not know that her perfect son was about to lose everything. The applause died down, and the string quartet resumed playing a soft classical melody that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. I watched Trevon step off the stage. At 29, he carried himself like he owned the world. He wore a custom-tailored suit that fit him perfectly, and he constantly adjusted his cuff to ensure everyone could see his watch. He called himself a venture capitalist and a cryptocurrency pioneer. My parents worshipped the ground he walked on. To them, he was the ultimate success story, a brilliant young black man claiming his rightful place among the wealthy elite of Atlanta. To me, he was a parasite who had bled our parents dry for years. I stayed near the marble pillars intending to remain unnoticed, but Trevon spotted me. His fake smile vanished the second we made eye contact. He marched over, grabbing my arm tightly and pulling me further into the dimly lit hallway away from the main ballroom. "What are you doing standing out here where people can see you?" he hissed, his eyes scanning my outfit with undisguised disgust. "Could you really not find a decent dress to wear to my engagement party? You look like you just got off a shift at a diner." I looked down at my simple black sheath dress. It was understated, unbranded, and cost more than his entire rented wardrobe. But I was not about to explain quiet luxury to a man wearing a counterfeit watch. "I am wearing what I always wear, Trevon," I replied, keeping my voice perfectly level and refusing to shrink under his glare. "You invited me." I showed up. "I invited you because Mom insisted we need family photos for the social media announcement," he snapped, checking his phone nervously. "But Sloan and her parents are going to be here any minute. Her family is old money from Silicon Valley. Her father sits on the board of 3 different banks. Sloan is a senior partner at a major venture capital firm. They expect excellence. They expect to meet my successful family. I cannot have them talking to someone who works as a customer service rep answering phones all day." "You mean the customer service job that paid for your car insurance last year when your crypto investments mysteriously crashed?" I asked, taking a slow sip of my water. His jaw clenched and a vein pulsed in his neck. "Keep your voice down. That was a temporary liquidity issue. I am a millionaire now. I rented this entire estate for the night to prove to Sloan's family that I operate on their level. I cannot have you ruining this with your loser energy. Just stay in the back, or better yet, go hang out in the kitchen with the catering staff until the photos happen." Before I could respond, my father Desmond stepped into the hallway. He smoothed his expensive silk tie, looking between Trevon and me with immediate irritation. "Is there a problem here?" my father demanded. "Trevon, you need to be at the front door. The valet just radioed that Sloan's parents have pulled into the driveway." "Dad, she is going to embarrass me," Trevon whined, pointing at me like a petulant child throwing a tantrum. "Look at her. She is going to tell Sloan's parents that she does tech support for a living. It ruins my entire image." I told them we come from a lineage of entrepreneurs and highly educated professionals. My father turned to me, his expression hardening into the same look of profound disappointment I had received every day since I decided not to join his church administration board and chose to teach myself coding instead. "Selah, why must you always be so difficult?" My father sighed heavily, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Your brother is about to secure a marriage that will elevate this entire family. Sloane is a powerful woman from a highly connected family. This union is critical for Trevon's business legacy and our standing in the community. Do not ruin this night for him with your lack of ambition and your stubborn attitude. I am simply standing in the hallway. Dad, I said calmly. I have not spoken to a single guest, nor do I plan to mingle with his friends. My father reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. He folded it and tried to press it into my hand. Take this. He ordered, his voice dropping to a harsh, demanding whisper. Go out through the service exit in the kitchen. Call yourself a ride home. We will tell Sloane that you had a sudden work emergency and had to leave. It is better for everyone if you are just not here when they walk through those doors. I do not want them asking questions about why my daughter is 32 and still has no real career, no husband, and no prospects. I looked at the $100 bill resting against my palm. My father was trying to pay me to disappear so his golden son could continue living a lie. He was willing to erase me completely just to protect a fabricated image of wealth and success. After years of emotional neglect, after building my entire life from the ground up while they poured all their resources into a son who only knew how to take, this was what it had come down to. $100 to walk out the back door. I did not take the money. Instead, I let it flutter to the marble floor between us. Keep your money, Dad, I said, my voice dropping to a temperature that made him take a half step back. You are going to need every single penny of it very soon. What is that supposed to mean? Trevon demanded, stepping forward aggressively, his fists balled at his sides. Are you threatening me? I did not answer him. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. I opened my messages and found the chat with Donovan, my lead corporate attorney. I typed 3 simple words. Drop the net. I hit send, slipped the phone back into my bag, and looked at my brother and father. Their faces were twisted in anger and confusion, completely unaware that the solid ground beneath them was about to vanish forever. I think I will stay for the main course, I said, stepping around them and walking straight back into the glaring lights of the ballroom. I would not miss this for the world. I walked back into the ballroom, the crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the crowd of Atlanta's elite. My parents were busy working the room, shaking hands, and accepting congratulations on their son's brilliant catch. Trevon was holding court near the ice sculpture, a glass of champagne in one hand, gesturing expansively with the other as he entertained a group of Sloane's relatives. He looked completely at ease, playing the role of the successful self-made venture capitalist to perfection. I found a quiet spot near the enormous floral arrangements that flanked the entrance to the dining room. I had just taken a sip of my water when I noticed a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The catering manager, a sharp-featured woman with a tight bun, was making her way urgently through the crowd. Her eyes were fixed on Trevon. She reached him, leaned in close, and whispered something in his ear. Trevon's confident smile faltered. His face drained of color, and the hand holding his champagne glass trembled slightly. He excused himself abruptly, leaving Sloane's relatives looking confused, and hurried after the manager toward the hallway leading to the kitchen. I set my glass down, a cold sense of anticipation settling in my stomach. I knew exactly what was happening. I followed at a discreet distance, slipping through the heavy oak doors into the chaotic heat of the catering kitchen. Trevon was cornered near the industrial refrigerators, his voice high and panicked. What do you mean it was declined? Run it again. It is a platinum card, for God's sake. There must be a glitch in your system. The catering manager's expression remained perfectly professional, but her tone was firm. Sir, we have run the card 3 times. It has been declined by your bank for insufficient funds. The final payment for tonight's catering and bar service is $25,000. We need another form of payment immediately, or we will be forced to suspend service. $25,000. Trevon repeated the number as if it were a foreign language. Just give me a minute. Let me make a call. He pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. I watched him from the shadows, the satisfaction of the moment tempered by the knowledge of what was to come. I had anticipated this. Trevon's entire life was a house of cards built on other people's money. It was only a matter of time before it collapsed. Before he could make his call, the kitchen doors swung open again. My parents rushed in, their faces tight with anxiety. They had clearly noticed Trevon's abrupt departure and followed him, desperate to ensure nothing marred their perfect evening. "What is going on here?" my father demanded, his voice low and urgent. "Trevon, why are you in the kitchen? Sloane's parents have just arrived." Trevon looked up, his eyes wide with panic. "Dad, there is a problem with my card. The catering company is demanding $25,000 and my card is being declined. It is just a glitch, a temporary hold on my account because of some international transfers I was making earlier today." My mother gasped, clutching her pearls. "A glitch. Oh, Trevon, you have to fix this immediately. We cannot have Sloane's family thinking we cannot afford to pay for this party. They are important people. What will they think of us?" "I cannot fix it right now." "Mom," Trevon hissed, his panic escalating, "the bank is closed. I cannot get the hold lifted until Monday. We need another card. Now." My father reached for his wallet, his face grim. "I have my corporate card, but it has a $10,000 limit. Vivian, do you have your American Express?" My mother shook her head frantically. "I maxed it out buying my dress for tonight and paying for the floral arrangements you promised to reimburse me for Trevon. We do not have $25,000 available right now." The panic in the room was palpable. They were cornered, trapped by their own desperation to maintain an illusion of wealth they did not possess. And then, as if on cue, all three pairs of eyes turned toward me. I was standing by the prep counters, watching the scene unfold with quiet amusement. "Selah," my father said, his voice dropping an octave, abandoning the demanding tone he usually reserved for me. "Come here." I stepped forward slowly, crossing my arms over my simple black dress. "Yes, Dad." "Your brother is in a bind," he said, his voice tight. "There has been a misunderstanding with his bank. We need you to cover the catering bill for tonight. Trevon will pay you back on Monday as soon as the hold on his account is lifted." I looked at him, then at my mother, then at Trevon, whose face was a mask of desperate entitlement. "You want me to pay $25,000 for a party I was just told to leave?" I asked, keeping my voice perfectly level. "It is a loan, Selah," my mother snapped, her panic making her vicious. "Do not be so difficult. We are talking about your brother's future here. Sloane's family is white and powerful. They represent a level of society we have worked our entire lives to reach. Do you want him to lose face in front of them? Do you want to ruin his chances at a marriage that will secure his place in this world?" I looked at my mother, the woman who had spent 32 years telling me I was not enough, now demanding I finance the illusion she had created for her golden child. "I thought you said I was just a customer service rep," I replied calmly. "How exactly do you expect a customer service rep to have $25,000 available on a Saturday night?" My mother's face flushed with anger. "I know you have money saved up, Selah. You never spend anything on yourself. You live like a pauper in that tiny apartment. You have no husband, no children, no life. What do you need money for? Swipe the card. This is about family loyalty. This is about protecting our legacy." Legacy. I repeated the word, tasting bitter on my tongue. "Is that what you call this? A legacy built on lies and unpaid bills?" Trevon stepped forward, his fists clenched, his desperation overriding his usual arrogance. "Selah, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "If Sloane's parents find out about this, the engagement is off. Her father is already skeptical of me. He thinks I am not established enough for her. If the caterers cut off the service, it will be a disaster. Just put it on your card. I swear I will pay you back with interest." I looked at my brother, the venture capitalist who was currently begging his sister for catering money. The contrast was almost poetic. "No," I said simply. The word hung in the hot air of the kitchen. "What do you mean, no?" My father roared, his composure finally shattering. You selfish, ungrateful girl. We raised you. We put a roof over your head. And this is how you repay us, by abandoning your family in their time of need. You will swipe that card right now, or you will no longer be a part of this family. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my chest. They were threatening to disown me over a catering bill. They were willing to sacrifice their daughter to save their son's fabricated image. I am already not a part of this family, Dad. I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. You made that perfectly clear when you tried to pay me $100 to leave through the back door. My mother lunged forward, grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You little brat, she hissed, her face contorted with rage. You are going to ruin everything. You have always been jealous of Trevon. You have always wanted to see him fail. You are doing this on purpose to humiliate us. I shoved her hand away forcefully. My mother stumbled back, shock registering on her face. I had never physically defied her before. His card did not glitch, I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. It declined because he is broke. He does not have $25,000, Mom. He does not have anything. He is a fraud, and you all know it. You have been covering for him for years, paying his debts, funding his lifestyle, pretending he is a success while you treat me like garbage. Well, the bank of Selah is closed. My father raised his hand, his face purple with rage. I will teach you respect, he bellowed, stepping toward me. But before his hand could connect with my face, the heavy oak doors of the kitchen swung open. The noise of the ballroom spilled in a stark contrast to the venomous silence of our confrontation. Standing in the doorway, perfectly composed and devastatingly beautiful, was Sloane. My father froze. His hand remained suspended in the air. The heavy oak doors slowly swung shut behind Sloane, muffling the lively jazz music from the ballroom. The sudden silence in the catering kitchen was deafening. My mother instantly transformed. The vicious snarl on her face melted into a practiced, elegant smile. She smoothed the front of her designer gown and took a quick step forward, physically blocking me from Sloane's line of sight. Oh, Sloane, darling, she cooed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. What are you doing back here in the service area? You should be out there mingling with the guests. We were just dealing with a tiny logistical hiccup. Trevon wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. He rushed toward his fiancée, reaching out to gently grasp her shoulders. Baby, you should not be in here, he said, his voice laced with a panic he was desperately trying to hide. The kitchen is a mess, and the staff is just sorting out a minor billing error. Let us go back out there. Your parents are waiting for us to take the official engagement photos. Sloane did not move. She did not let Trevon turn her around. She was a senior partner at one of the most ruthless venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. You do not reach that level by letting men steer you away from a room full of red flags. Her eyes swept over the scene. She took in my father's rigid posture and clenched fists. She noticed my mother's forced smile and the frantic energy radiating from her. She saw the sheer terror pouring off the man she was supposed to marry. Finally, her gaze landed on me. I stood perfectly still. I did not shrink back or look away. I met her eyes with the calm, steady gaze of someone who had absolutely nothing to lose. For a long moment, Sloane just stared at me, her brow furrowed slightly as if she was trying to solve a complex puzzle. She stepped around my mother, completely ignoring Vivian's nervous chatter. Trevon tried to intervene again, stepping between us. Sloane, listen to me, he pleaded. My sister is just having one of her episodes. She is not well. We were just asking her to leave so she would not cause a scene and embarrass us in front of your family. She is just a customer service rep who struggles to make ends meet, and she gets very jealous of my success. Please do not pay any attention to her. It is just sad, really. Sloane held up a single manicured hand, silencing Trevon instantly. She took another step closer to me, her eyes scanning my face, my posture, the unbranded but impeccably tailored black dress I was wearing. She looked at the way I held myself, not like a broken scapegoat, but like someone who owned the very ground we were standing on. The confusion in her expression slowly morphed into absolute realization. She let out a soft breath. "Wait." Sloane whispered, her voice barely carrying over the hum of the industrial refrigerators. "You are." "No way. Are you Selah, the founder of Aura?" The kitchen fell into a deathly silence. My father dropped his arm completely, his mouth falling open. Trevon looked like he had just been struck by lightning, his entire fabricated world crumbling in real time. My mother, however, was too caught up in her own delusions to recognize the magnitude of what had just happened. She could not comprehend a reality where I was anything more than the family punching bag. Vivian let out a high-pitched mocking laugh. It echoed off the stainless steel counters, sounding harsh and desperate. "Oh, Sloane, sweetheart, you are completely mistaken," my mother said, waving her hand dismissively. "This is Selah." "Yes, but she is certainly not the founder of anything. She just answers phones at some tech call center. She barely makes enough to pay her rent. You must have her confused with someone important. Trevon is the only CEO in this family. He is the mastermind. He is the one who built everything." Sloane did not even look at my mother. She kept her eyes locked on mine. A slow smile spread across her face. Not a warm smile, but the sharp, calculated smile of a predator who had just found exactly what she was hunting for. She recognized the dynamic immediately. She saw the abusive parents, the parasitic brother, and the brilliant woman they had all been trying to bury. When Sloane finally spoke, her voice was ice cold, and it sliced through my mother's arrogance like a scalpel. "Ma'am," Sloane said without looking away from me, "my venture capital firm has been chasing her for 8 months. We have sent dozens of investment proposals to her private office, and she has ignored every single one of them. Forbes just valued her company at $800 million. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the faint hum of the industrial refrigerator and the distant clinking of glasses from the ballroom. My mother stood completely frozen with her mouth slightly open. The practiced smile she used for high society events had literally melted off her face. She looked back and forth between Sloane and me, trying to find a punchline to a joke that did not exist. My father was the first to break the silence. His face turned a deep shade of crimson, and he stepped aggressively toward Sloane. "Now listen here, young lady," my father barked, using his deepest, most authoritative voice. "I do not know what kind of scam you think you are running, or who told you these ridiculous lies, but you are highly mistaken. This is my daughter Selah. She is a college dropout who fixes computers and answers phones for a living. She does not own a company. She does not have a dime to her name. You are being scammed by someone using her face or her name." Sloane did not flinch. She just stared at my father with a look of pure clinical pity. "Sir, I run a venture capital firm that manages $4 billion in assets." Sloane said, her voice perfectly even. "I do not get scammed. I know exactly who I am looking at. Selah built Aura from the ground up and revolutionized elite property management. She is a ghost in the media, but her financial footprint is undeniable." Trevon was hyperventilating now. The sweat was visibly beading on his forehead, ruining his perfectly groomed appearance. He realized that the wealthy bride he was using to secure his fake legacy was slipping through his fingers. He lunged forward and grabbed Sloane by the shoulders, attempting to physically block her from looking at me. "Sloane, look at me," Trevon pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. "She is lying. She is a total imposter. I swear to you, she is mentally unstable. She has always been jealous of me and my success. She probably read about this Aura company online and is trying to steal the credit to impress you. She is a parasite, Sloane. You have to believe me." I watched my brother unravel. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. He was willing to call his own sister insane rather than admit he was a fraud. My parents immediately backed him up. "He is right," my mother chimed in, her voice shrill and frantic. "Selah has always been a deeply troubled girl. She makes up stories. You cannot believe a word she says, Sloane. Trevon is the real genius here. Trevon is the one with the investment portfolio. I let them talk. I let them dig the hole as deep as they possibly could. I watched Sloane look down at the hands Trevon had wrapped around her shoulders. She calmly reached up and removed his hands, pushing him away with a look of profound disgust. I reached into my bag. My movements were slow and deliberate. I did not yell. I did not defend myself against their accusations of mental illness. I simply pulled out my iPad and unlocked the screen. Trevon saw the device, and his eyes darted nervously toward the kitchen doors, as if calculating his escape route. My father took another threatening step toward me. "Put that away, Selah," my father ordered, his voice echoing off the tile walls. "Stop playing these games. You have ruined enough of this evening. You are going to march out the back door right now before I call security and have you thrown out of this estate." I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that finally made my father hesitate. "Security works for the property management company, Dad," I said softly, tapping the screen of my iPad. "And the property management company works for Aura." Trevon swallowed hard. He took a step backward, bumping into a prep table. "You keep telling Sloane that I am a jealous imposter." I continued, keeping my eyes locked on my brother. "You keep telling everyone that you are a self-made millionaire who spared no expense for this engagement party. You bragged to the entire ballroom that you rented this magnificent Buckhead estate out of your own pocket just to show Sloane family how wealthy you are." Trevon opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He just stared at the iPad in my hands like it was a loaded weapon. I took a step forward, closing the distance between us. "If I am an imposter," I asked, my voice echoing in the dead quiet of the kitchen, "who owns this exclusive mega mansion you supposedly rented for tonight?" I watched the color drain from my brother's face as the question hung in the air. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The swagger, the counterfeit confidence, the carefully constructed persona of a successful venture capitalist. It all evaporated in a single second. My mother let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "What kind of ridiculous question is that, Selah?" she said, stepping closer to Trevon as if to shield him from my words. "Your brother rented this estate. He showed us the booking confirmation himself. He paid for it with his own money to celebrate his engagement. Stop trying to ruin his special night with your delusional fantasies." I ignored her and turned my attention to the large flat-screen television mounted on the kitchen wall, usually reserved for displaying catering menus and event schedules. With a quick swipe on my iPad, I mirrored my screen to the television. "Let us look at that booking confirmation, shall we?" I said, my voice steady and clear. The television screen flickered to life, displaying the internal property management dashboard of Aura. The interface was sleek and proprietary, displaying data that only executive-level administrators could access. I tapped a few times, pulling up the specific file for the Buckhead estate we were currently standing in. The screen displayed the property details, the astronomical nightly rental rate, and the ownership records. Right at the top, in bold letters, was the holding company name, a subsidiary wholly owned by Aura. "This estate is one of our flagship properties," I explained, gesturing to the screen. "It is reserved exclusively for our platinum-tier clients. The nightly rate is $50,000. My father stared at the screen, his brow furrowed in confusion. "So what?" he grumbled. "Trevon paid the $50,000. He is a successful man. He can afford it." I shook my head slowly, a cold smile touching my lips. "That is the interesting part, Dad. You see, I received an alert on my personal dashboard earlier today regarding a highly irregular booking for this exact property." I tapped the screen again, and the display shifted to show the booking log for the evening. The booking was not made by a platinum client. I continued, my eyes locked on Trevon, who was now sweating profusely. It was not made by a venture capitalist or a crypto millionaire. In fact, it was not paid for at all. I zoomed in on the booking details, projecting them large enough for everyone in the kitchen to read clearly. "The reservation was entered into our system at 2 in the morning. 3 days ago," I stated, reading the information off the screen. It was booked using the employee access code of a junior maintenance technician named Marcus, a technician who coincidentally used to play basketball with Trevon in high school. My mother gasped, taking a step back. Trevon, what is she talking about? I did not let him answer. I kept the pressure on delivering the facts with lethal precision. Trevon did not rent this mansion, I said, turning to look directly at Sloane, whose face had gone dangerously still. He hacked a low-level employee account to bypass the payment gateway and book the estate for free. He falsified the guest registry and generated a fake confirmation email to show our parents. The catering manager, who had been watching this entire exchange with wide eyes, let out a small noise of shock. And as for the catering bill, I continued addressing the manager directly. The credit card he gave you? The one that was just declined, it is not a platinum corporate card. It is a prepaid debit card that he likely bought at a gas station. It declined because it only ever had $50 loaded onto it. The silence in the kitchen was heavier now, suffocating in its intensity. The illusion had not just cracked, it had shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Trevon let out a strangled sound. "It is a lie," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at the screen. "She hacked that system. She is framing me." "Sloane, you have to believe me. She is a psychopath. She has been planning this to destroy me." Sloane did not look at him. She did not flinch. She simply stared at the television screen, processing the information with the cold analytical mind that had made her a senior partner at a major venture capital firm. She was looking at hard data, at undeniable proof of fraud. "You lied to me," Sloane said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Baby." "No," Trevon pleaded, reaching for her again. His desperation was pathetic. "It is just a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. I just wanted to give you the perfect night. I just wanted to show your family that I could provide for you." "You provided nothing," Sloane cut him off, her words slicing through his excuses like a razor. "You faked a booking. You stole an employee's access code. You handed a catering manager a fraudulent credit card. You are not a venture capitalist, Trevon. You are a con artist." My mother let out a wail, throwing her hands over her face. "No, no, this cannot be happening." "Trevon, tell her it is not true. Tell her you have the money." "He does not have the money, Mom," I said, my voice rising slightly to cut over her hysterics. "He never had the money. Every designer suit, every expensive dinner, every flashy vacation he has taken in the past 3 years has been funded by lies, credit card debt, and whatever he could scam out of you and Dad." "Shut up!" Trevon screamed, his face contorted with a rage I had never seen before. "Shut your mouth right now, Selah. You have ruined everything. Ruined. I am going to kill you." He lunged forward, his hands outstretched, aiming straight for my throat. I did not move. I did not blink. But before Trevon could reach me, my father moved. Desmond did not step in to restrain his out-of-control son. He did not step in to protect his daughter. Instead, he stepped past Trevon, his own face twisted with a fury that matched his golden boy's. "How dare you humiliate your brother like this?" my father roared, raising his hand high into the air, preparing to strike me down. "You ungrateful, vindictive little—" My father's hand descended with terrifying speed. But I was faster. I caught his wrist inches from my face, my grip locking around his skin like a vice. Years of suppressing my anger, of shrinking to make them comfortable, vanished in that single physical point of contact. I looked directly into my father's eyes, and for the first time in his life, he saw someone who was not afraid of him. "You want to hit me to protect him?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet but carrying enough venom to make my father freeze. "You are going to strike your daughter in front of 50 catering staff and a Silicon Valley executive to defend a man who has been lying to you since the day he learned how to speak." I shoved his arm back hard enough that he stumbled slightly against the prep table. He looked down at his wrist, then up at me, his expression a mixture of fury and genuine shock. My mother let out a small, terrified gasp, covering her mouth with both hands. Trevon stood paralyzed against the industrial refrigerators, his chest heaving, his eyes darting frantically around the room as if searching for an escape hatch that did not exist. "You do not understand anything," my father growled, trying to regain his dominant posture, though his voice lacked its usual booming authority. "Your brother is building an empire. He has a vision. You are just trying to tear him down because you cannot stand that he is achieving what you never could. He had a temporary setback today, but he is managing millions." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh that echoed off the stainless steel walls. "Managing millions?" I repeated the words, dripping with contempt. "Is that what he told you, Dad? Did he tell you he was managing millions when you and Mom secretly mortgaged the retirement home you spent 30 years paying off just to hand him $300,000 in startup capital?" The catering kitchen went so silent, you could hear the soft whir of the ventilation system. Sloane, who had been watching the scene unfold with the detached calculation of an apex predator, suddenly tilted her head, her eyes narrowing as she absorbed this new piece of information. My mother's face drained of all color, turning an ashen gray that matched her silver hair. "Desmond," she whispered, her voice barely audible, looking at my father with wide, terrified eyes. "How does she know about the house? We swore we would never tell anyone. We signed the papers in secret." "How do I know?" I asked, turning my attention to my mother. "Because when Trevon missed the first 3 mortgage payments, the bank sent the delinquency notices to my old apartment address, which he conveniently used as his secondary mailing address to hide the paper trail from you both. You handed him the deed to your future, and he did not even have the decency to pay the interest." "It is an investment," my father barked, though a fine sheen of sweat had broken out on his forehead. "It takes money to make money. Trevon put that capital into high-yield crypto portfolios. The market fluctuates, Selah. You would not understand high-level finance. He is going to see a tenfold return by next quarter. He promised us." I looked at Trevon. He was visibly shaking now, pressing himself so hard against the refrigerator door it looked like he was trying to phase through the solid metal. His golden child armor had completely dissolved, leaving behind nothing but a terrified little boy caught in a lie. "Tell them, Trevon," I commanded, my voice echoing in the stifling heat of the kitchen. "Tell your parents where their retirement fund went. Tell them about the high-level finance you were executing." He shook his head frantically, his eyes wide and pleading. "Selah, please do not do this. Please, I will do anything. I will pay them back. Just stop talking." "I will not stop," I said, turning back to my iPad. The screen on the kitchen wall shifted from the property records to a highly detailed financial dashboard. "You want to know about his investments, Dad? Let us look at the portfolio." I tapped a few keys and a series of transaction logs populated the large screen. Row after row of red numbers, transfers, withdrawals, and massive financial hemorrhages. "He did not put your $300,000 into a tech startup or a crypto portfolio," I explained, tracing the lines of data on the screen. "He wired $80,000 to an offshore account registered in the Bahamas, which was flagged by federal authorities as a known crypto scam 3 weeks later." The money vanished instantly. My mother clutched her chest, swaying slightly on her feet. "No," she moaned, her voice thick with denial. "Trevon told us he was buying server farms. He showed us the blueprints. He downloaded those blueprints from Google Images, Mom." I said, my tone unrelenting. "But the scam was just the beginning. Let us look at where the rest of your retirement went." I swiped to the next page of the transaction log. The screen filled with names of luxury casinos, high-stakes online betting platforms, and elite velvet rope nightclubs in Las Vegas. The amounts were staggering. 10,000 here, 20,000 there, all bleeding out of the account in rapid succession. He blew the remaining $220,000 at the blackjack tables and VIP sports betting lounges in Vegas over the course of exactly 8 weeks. I stated, the raw data backing up every word. He was dropping $5,000 a night on bottle service, while the bank was mailing foreclosure warnings to my apartment. Your golden boy did not build an empire. He built a mountain of gambling debt, and he financed his losing streak with the roof over your heads. The kitchen descended into absolute chaos. My mother let out a gut-wrenching wail, collapsing against the prep counter, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the stainless steel edge as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. My father stared at the screen, his eyes tracking the long list of casino charges, his chest heaving with ragged, uneven breaths. The reality of his ruined financial future was colliding violently with the image of the son he idolized. Sloane stood perfectly still, absorbing the magnitude of the deception. The man she had agreed to marry was not just broke. He was a pathological liar who had essentially robbed his own parents to fund a gambling addiction. The disgust on her face was palpable, a cold, hard revulsion that signaled the absolute end of whatever relationship they had. Trevon fell to his knees on the slick kitchen floor, his designer suit bunching awkwardly around his legs. He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with loud, theatrical sobs. It was a sickness, he wailed, looking up at my mother through his tears. I could not stop, Mom. I was trying to win it back for you. I swear I was just trying to double it so I could buy you a bigger house. I just needed one more good hand. I looked down at him, feeling absolutely nothing but a profound sense of closure. He blew it all on offshore crypto scams and Vegas casinos in 2 months. I said, my voice cutting through his pathetic apologies. And the worst part is, Dad, he did not even buy you a nice watch with your own money before he lost the rest of it. My father stared at the large television screen, his chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow breaths as the reality of his ruined retirement washed over him. The transaction logs, glowing in harsh white and red numbers, were undeniable, but my mother absolutely refused to look at the facts. She dropped to the floor, wrapping her arms protectively around Trevon, who was still sobbing into his hands. He was just scammed, Desmond, my mother cried out, her voice echoing off the sterile tile walls of the catering kitchen. Look at him. He is a victim here. People lose money in investments all the time. He was trying to build generational wealth for this family. The market is just volatile right now. He had good intentions. Playing blackjack in the Bellagio High Roller Lounge is not a volatile market, Mom, I said, my voice devoid of any sympathy. It is a severe gambling addiction. He sat at a table and handed the deed to your house directly to a dealer while sipping complimentary champagne. There is no victim here except you and Dad, and you volunteered for the position. My mother snapped her head toward me, her eyes blazing with a toxic mixture of desperation and furious entitlement. She scrambled to her feet, leaving Trevon shivering on the floor. You fix this, then, she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at my face. You fix this right now. You heard what Sloane said. You are a billionaire, Selah. You have $800 million sitting in some bank account, while you let your own flesh and blood suffer. You can pay off the mortgage today. You can give your brother the capital he needs to start over and clear his debts. Write a check, Selah. Write a check and save your family. I looked at the woman who had birthed me, the woman who had spent my entire life measuring my worth by how much I shrank to make room for my brother's fragile ego. You really think this is about money, Mom? I asked, taking a slow, deliberate step toward her. You think writing a check will fix the fact that you and Dad raised a man-child who feels completely entitled to steal from his own parents? You watch your tone when you speak to your mother, my father warned, though his voice lacked its usual booming authority. He looked broken, but his patriarchal pride was still fighting for survival. She is right, Selah. If you have this kind of wealth, it is your duty to protect the family name. What happens when the church congregation finds out we are facing foreclosure? What happens to our standing in the community? You owe us this. We gave you life. Your standing in the community, I repeated, shaking my head in absolute disgust. That is all you care about. The optics. You are so obsessed with portraying the perfect black elite family in Atlanta that you enabled a parasite. You told me I was an embarrassment for building a real business from scratch because it did not look glamorous enough for your Sunday dinners. You demanded excellence from your daughter, but you demanded absolutely nothing from your son except his mere existence. I gestured toward Trevon, who was slowly pushing himself up from the floor. You expect black women to be the mules of the family? I continued, my voice rising with years of suppressed frustration. You expect me to carry the heavy load, to suffer in silence, and to pull out my wallet the second your golden boy makes a mistake? You watched him mock my clothes tonight. You handed me $100 bill and told me to leave through the back door so I would not ruin his fake billionaire aesthetic. And now you expect me to use the empire I built while you were throwing me away to clean up his massive mess. The answer is no. My mother gasped, clutching her chest as if I had physically struck her. You are a monster, she hissed. You are going to let your brother go down in flames just to prove a point. I am going to let my brother face the natural consequences of his actions, I corrected her coldly. Something you should have let him do 20 years ago. Trevon leaned heavily against the stainless steel prep table. He ignored my words completely. His eyes were fixed entirely on Sloane, who had been standing silently near the exit doors observing the entire breakdown with clinical precision. The illusion of the wealthy venture capitalist was completely gone, leaving only a desperate con artist trying to secure his final mark. Sloane. Please, Trevon begged, taking a hesitant step toward her. His voice took on that smooth, manipulative tone he always used when he was trying to charm his way out of a corner. You know me. You know my heart, baby. I made a terrible mistake, but I can fix this. We can fix this together. Sloane did not blink. She simply watched him approach. Your firm can front me a bridge loan. Trevon continued his desperation, making him reckless. Just a small injection of capital to cover my parents' house and get my portfolio back in the green. It is pocket change for a firm like yours, Sloane. We are going to be married. We are partners. You know how hard it is for a black man to get traditional funding in the tech space. I just had to hustle to get my foot in the door. Do not let my sister ruin what we have. She is just trying to tear a successful black man down. The absolute audacity of his statement hung in the hot air of the kitchen. He was actually trying to weaponize his race and play the victim card to a venture capital partner after just being exposed for stealing from his own elderly parents to gamble in Las Vegas. Sloane looked at Trevon as if he were a new species of insect she had just discovered under a microscope. She did not yell. She did not cry. The cold, analytical mind that made her a predator in boardrooms across Silicon Valley was fully engaged. She reached out and took hold of the massive diamond engagement ring on her left hand. She twisted the ring, sliding it smoothly off her finger. The heavy piece of jewelry made a sharp, crisp clink as she dropped it onto the metal prep counter between them. You did not just con your parents, Trevon Sloane said, her voice dropping to a freezing whisper that commanded the entire room. You were using me to access my family's wealth. The heavy diamond ring spun on the stainless steel counter before coming to a complete stop. Trevon stared at the ring as if it were a venomous snake. The sudden noise seemed to echo forever in the stifling heat of the catering kitchen. The smell of expensive, unserved appetizers hung heavy in the air, while the catering staff huddled silently in the corner, watching the destruction of a wealthy family play out in real time. Trevon dropped to his knees right there on the slick tile floor. His designer suit pants soaked up a small puddle of spilled water, but he did not seem to care. He reached out, grabbing the hem of Sloane's dress with trembling hands. Baby, please, you cannot do this, he begged, his voice cracking into a pathetic whine. I love you. The money does not matter. We can build our own legacy together. I just made a bad call because I was trying to impress your father. You know how much pressure I was under. Sloane took a deliberate step backward, pulling the expensive fabric of her dress out of his desperate grasp. She looked down at him with a mixture of profound boredom and absolute disgust. Build our own legacy, Sloane repeated, her tone completely flat and devoid of any sympathy. You do not even know what a capitalization table is, Trevon. I ran deep background checks on you months ago. I knew your cryptocurrency startup was a hollow shell company. I knew your luxury cars were leased and you were barely making the payments. My parents gasped in unison. Trevon looked up at her, his eyes wide with pure shock. The tears streaking down his face seemed to freeze. You knew, he whispered. Of course I knew, Sloane said coldly, adjusting the strap of her evening gown. I am a senior partner at a multi-billion-dollar venture capital firm. We investigate every single asset and liability. I tolerated your pathetic financial posturing because you promised me unparalleled access to the Atlanta Black elite. You sold me a grand narrative of a powerful, influential family that controlled local politics and commercial real estate. My firm desperately needed a demographic bridge in the southern market. You were supposed to be the shiny, well-connected figurehead while I handled the actual capital and strategy. Sloane crossed her arms, looking around the kitchen at my horrified parents and then pointing directly at the television screen that was still displaying his massive casino debts. But this, she continued, her voice dropping to a freezing whisper, this is just pathetic. You are not a figurehead. You are a massive liability. Stealing from your own elderly parents to play blackjack in Las Vegas is not just terrible business. It is a severe character flaw that makes you entirely useless to me and my firm. My mother could not take the humiliation anymore. She rushed forward, trying to grab Sloane by the arm. Now listen here. You cannot just walk into this estate and break my son's heart, she yelled, her voice trembling with misplaced maternal rage. He loves you and we are a good family. You cannot just throw him away like trash because of a simple mistake. Sloane slowly turned her head and gave my mother a look so terrifyingly cold, it could have stopped a beating heart. Do not touch me, ma'am, Sloane warned, stepping back to maintain her physical boundary. And do not ever talk to me about being a good family. You secretly mortgaged your retirement to fund a gambling addict just to keep up appearances at your country club. Your financial literacy is as bankrupt as your son. You enable a parasite because you care more about Sunday dinner gossip than actual generational wealth. My mother flinched violently, as if she had been slapped across the face. She stumbled back, bumping into my father, who was too stunned to even speak. His golden boy was being verbally dismantled and utterly destroyed by the very woman he thought would secure their family status forever. Trevon scrambled to his feet, his face red with humiliation and panic. Sloane? You are making a massive mistake, he shouted, trying to salvage his shattered ego. You need me. You said it yourself that your firm needs my local connections. You cannot navigate the southern market without me guiding you. Sloane did not even acknowledge his outburst. She completely ignored his existence, as if he were nothing more than an annoying stain on the floor. Instead, she turned her back to him and walked directly toward me. The air in the kitchen shifted immediately. The chaotic, desperate energy Trevon was projecting crashed against the calm, collected presence Sloane and I maintained. She stopped a few feet away from me. Her eyes scanned my face, and I saw a genuine flicker of professional respect replace the disgust she had just shown my brother. She reached into her elegant clutch and pulled out a sleek, matte black business card, holding it out to me. I knew Aura was a ghost in the industry. Sloane said, her voice changing from hostile to entirely professional. My analysts have been trying to uncover the founder identity for the better part of a year. We tracked the holding companies and we followed the real estate acquisitions. But you buried your paper trail beautifully. I had absolutely no idea the brilliant mind behind the platform was hiding in plain sight, enduring this absurd family circus. I took the business card from her hand. It felt heavy and expensive. I have always preferred to let the work speak for itself, I replied smoothly, meeting her gaze. Loud people usually have the least to say. Sloane let out a short, genuine laugh. She glanced over her shoulder at Trevon, who was watching us with wide, terrified eyes. Then she turned back to me, locking in on the only thing that mattered to either of us now. Forget this clown, Sloane said, dismissing her former fiancé with a single wave of her hand. Selah, my legal team will be at Aura headquarters on Monday morning. Let us close that $50 million deal. Thoughts. The offer hung in the heavy kitchen air. $50 million. It was exactly the series of funding round Aura needed to expand our European portfolio. Sloane was not offering this out of charity or spite. She was a shark who recognized another shark. She had come to Atlanta looking for a solid investment, and she had just found the real prize. My father let out a choked, wet sound. 50 million, he gasped, grasping the edge of the metal prep table to keep himself upright. You are talking about $50 million. I did not look at my father. I did not look at my mother, who was openly weeping now, clutching her ruined designer dress. I kept my eyes firmly on Sloane. I reached out my hand, feeling the ultimate vindication wash over me. Monday at 9 in the morning, I said. My legal team will have the term sheets ready for your review. Sloane smiled firmly and shook my hand. Her grip was strong and certain. It was the exact moment the power dynamic in my family permanently shifted. The golden child was officially worthless, and the invisible daughter was holding the keys to the kingdom. Seeing us shake hands broke something deep and fragile inside Trevon. The humiliation of being discarded by his wealthy fiancée was bad enough, but watching her immediately offer tens of millions of dollars to the sister he had spent his entire life belittling completely shattered his mind. He let out a visceral, primal scream. It did not sound human. It was the sound of a bloated ego violently imploding in real time. No, Trevon roared, his face contorting into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. You do not get to do this to me. You do not get to take what is mine. He lowered his head and lunged forward, charging across the slick kitchen floor with his fists raised, aiming a violent physical attack directly at both women who had just ended his life. He never made it to us. Before Trevon could close the distance and lay a single finger on Sloane or me, the heavy double doors of the catering kitchen burst open with a deafening crash. The sudden noise froze everyone in their tracks. Two uniformed Atlanta police officers stormed into the room, their heavy boots thudding against the tile floor. They moved with practiced, tactical precision, zeroing in on the furious man charging toward two unarmed women. Before Trevon even realized what was happening, the larger of the two officers tackled him from the side. The impact sent them both crashing into a stainless steel prep station, sending a tray of crystal champagne flutes shattering onto the floor. Get off me! Trevon screamed, thrashing wildly as the officer pinned his arms behind his back. Do you know who I am? I am a venture capitalist. This is my engagement party. My mother let out a blood-curdling shriek. She lunged toward the officers, slapping at their broad shoulders with her manicured hands. Get your hands off my son, she wailed, her voice cracking with hysteria. He is a good boy. He was just upset. You cannot do this to us. We are a respectable family. Do you know who we are in this community? Ma'am, step back right now, or you will be arrested for assaulting a police officer, the second cop ordered, placing his hand firmly on his duty belt. My father grabbed my mother by the waist, pulling her back, though his own face was twisted in a mixture of outrage and terror. This is a private family matter, my father bellowed, trying to use his booming voice to command authority he no longer possessed. My son was just having an emotional reaction to a misunderstanding. There is no need for law enforcement. I demand you release him immediately. This is no longer a family matter, Desmond. A smooth baritone voice echoed from the doorway. I looked past the struggling officers and saw Donovan stepping into the kitchen. My lead corporate attorney looked immaculate in a charcoal bespoke suit, holding a thick leather briefcase in one hand and a manila folder in the other. Donovan was a force of nature in the courtroom, a man who had built his reputation dismantling fraudulent executives and protecting corporate empires. He surveyed the chaotic kitchen with absolute disdain. Who the hell are you? My father demanded, stepping in front of my mother as if to shield her from the lawyer's calm gaze. I am the man who is going to make sure your son goes to prison, Donovan replied smoothly, walking over to stand beside me. He gave Sloane a polite nod of acknowledgement, which she returned with a look of professional respect. Then Donovan turned his attention to my parents. My name is Donovan. and I represent Selah and her company Aura. Your son is currently being detained because he is an active threat, but that is the least of his legal problems tonight. My mother began to sob uncontrollably, leaning heavily against my father. Selah, tell them to stop, she pleaded, looking at me with wild, desperate eyes. Tell your lawyer to call off these police officers. He is your brother. We can handle this at home. We will pay for the catering. We will cancel the party. Just do not let them take my baby away in handcuffs. Think of what the church members will say. Think of the gossip. I looked at my mother, feeling a profound sense of emptiness. You are still worrying about church gossip, Mom? I asked, my voice devoid of any emotion. Your son just tried to physically attack me and the woman he was scamming, and your biggest concern is what the neighbors will whisper about at Sunday service. You enabled a monster, and now the monster is facing reality. Trevon was still struggling against the officer, his face pressed hard against the cold metal of the prep table. Selah, you vindictive psychopath! He spat, his words slurred from having his cheeks smashed against the steel. You planned all of this. You called the cops to ruin my life because you are a miserable, lonely failure. Donovan stepped forward, opening the manila folder he had brought with him. He pulled out a stack of legally stamped documents, holding them up so my father could clearly see the official seals. Actually, Trevon, Donovan said, his voice projecting a lethal calm. I called the police, and I did not do it because Selah is vindictive. I did it because you are a criminal. When my client alerted me to your unauthorized use of Aura property today, I initiated an immediate audit of your recent digital footprint. My father swallowed hard, his eyes darting between Donovan and the police officers. An audit? He repeated weakly. What does that mean? It means we looked into exactly how your son managed to secure the funding he blew at the Bellagio, Donovan explained, turning his gaze to my father. You thought he only burned the $300,000 you gave him from your reverse mortgage. But a man with a gambling addiction does not stop when the bank runs dry. He finds another source of capital. My mother stopped crying. The kitchen went entirely still, save for the heavy breathing of my brother against the table. Trevon suddenly stopped fighting the officers. His body went completely rigid, and the lingering defiance in his eyes was instantly replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. Donovan looked down at Trevon, tapping the legal documents against the palm of his hand. Trevon, we have a warrant for your arrest, Donovan said, his voice carrying the finality of a judge passing a sentence, and it is not just for hacking Aura's system. My father stepped forward, his voice trembling as he looked from the police officers to my lawyer. What else did he do? Desmond asked, his eyes pleading for it to be a minor infraction. Donovan did not answer him directly. Instead, he turned to me and gave a brief nod, signaling that it was time to deliver the final blow. I walked over to the prep table where Sloane had dropped the engagement ring. I picked it up, holding the massive diamond under the harsh kitchen lights. It was a beautiful piece of jewelry, but the story behind it was entirely rotten. I looked down at my brother, who was still pinned against the stainless steel counter by the police officer. You ran out of Mom and Dad retirement money weeks ago. Trevon, I said, pacing slowly in front of him. The offshore scams and the Vegas casinos bled you dry long before you ever set foot in that jewelry store to buy this ring. But a man who desperately needs to impress a Silicon Valley executive cannot just admit he is broke. He has to keep up the facade. So you went looking for a new cash cow. My mother was hyperventilating now, clutching her chest as she leaned against my father. Where did you get the money? Trevon, she cried out. Tell me you did not borrow from dangerous people. He did not just borrow from dangerous people. Mom, I answered for him. He borrowed from them using my name. I tapped my iPad, mirroring a new set of documents to the kitchen television. The screen filled with loan agreements, bank transfers, and digital signatures. Last month, Trevon dug through old tax documents in your home office and stole my social security number. He used my identity, my pristine credit score, and my corporate background to secure a $500,000 loan from a predatory shadow lending group based out of Miami. Sloane let out a sharp breath, shaking her head in absolute disbelief. You forged a $500,000 loan in your sister's name just to buy a ring and rent some luxury cars? Sloane asked, her voice laced with pure venom. Trevon squirmed under the officer grip, his face a mask of sweat and tears. I was going to pay it back, he sobbed, looking frantically at me. Selah, I swear I had a guaranteed investment lined up. I just needed bridge capital to hold me over until the wedding. Once I had access to Sloane family funds, I was going to clear the debt, and you never would have even known about it. You were going to use your white wife family money to secretly pay off a loan you fraudulently took out in your black sister name, I summarized, letting the sheer absurdity of his master plan echo through the room. You really thought you were a genius, did you not? You thought you could just shuffle millions of dollars around like Monopoly money and no one would ever catch on. Sloane stepped forward, her eyes burning with a cold fury. Do you have any idea what would have happened to my firm if we had gotten married, Trevon? She asked, her voice shaking with rage. My venture capital fund operates under strict federal oversight. If my husband was caught laundering shadow money and committing identity theft, the SEC would have frozen my accounts. My partners would have forced me out. You would not have just ruined your sister, you would have destroyed my entire career to cover your gambling debts. I did not mean to, Trevon sobbed, his knees buckling slightly as the officer held him up. I was just trying to level the playing field. Dad always said a black man has to fake it until he makes it in this world. I was just trying to survive. My father seized on that pathetic excuse, nodding eagerly. He is right, Selah, my father pleaded, taking a step toward me. The system is rigged against young black men trying to break into venture capital. He had to cut some corners to get a seat at the table. You made it because you got lucky with some tech app, but Trevon had to fight for his image. You have to understand the pressure he was under to represent this family. I stared at my father, completely disgusted by his willingness to justify a felony. Dad, I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. He did not cut corners to break into venture capital. He stole $500,000 to buy a diamond ring and rent sports cars. He committed identity theft. He committed wire fraud. He forged my signature on federal lending documents. He put my life and Sloane's life in jeopardy so he could play pretend on internet platforms. And now you want me to commit a crime by lying to federal investigators just to save a man who would gladly let a shadow lender come after me over his unpaid debts. You are being dramatic, my father argued desperately, his voice cracking. It is just money, Selah. We are family. Black families have to protect each other from the system. You protect him. I corrected, my tone absolute and unforgiving. You always have. You let him steal your retirement house, and now you want him to steal my name. You use the struggle of black men as an excuse for his laziness and deceit. My success was not luck, Dad. It was 10 years of coding in a dark room while you were buying him tailored suits. My mother threw herself onto the floor, grabbing at my ankles. Her designer dress was ruined. Her hair was a mess, but she did not care. She only cared about her golden boy. Please, Selah! She wailed, tears streaming down her face. I will do anything. Your father and I will work for the rest of our lives to pay you back. Just do not press charges. He will not survive in prison. They will eat him alive. You have to save him. I looked down at my mother, pulling my leg free from her desperate grasp. I am not saving him, Mom, I said firmly. I am holding him accountable. Something you and Dad failed to do for 29 years. You raised a boy who thinks the rules do not apply to him because you never made him face a single consequence. He built his entire life on the backs of the women in this family, and tonight the ride officially stops. I turned my attention back to Trevon, who was now weeping loudly as the officers pulled him up from the counter and securely fastened the metal handcuffs around his wrists. The clicking of the metal locking into place was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Identity theft and felony wire fraud. I said, tossing the engagement ring onto the floor right next to his wet shoes. Congratulations, little brother. You will be wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of a tuxedo. The metallic click of the handcuffs snapping shut around Trevon's wrists sounded like a gunshot in the catering kitchen. The larger police officer yanked my brother to his feet, rough and unyielding. Trevon let out a high-pitched whimper, his knees buckling under his own weight. He looked absolutely pathetic, a grown man stripped of his counterfeit designer armor, weeping openly as the officer began reciting his Miranda rights. "Dad, do something!" Trevon wailed, twisting his neck to look at our father. "Call a lawyer, Dad. Please do not let them take me." My father took a half-step forward, his hands raised in a futile gesture of authority, but he stopped abruptly when the second officer placed a firm hand on his utility belt. Desmond was a man who ruled his household and his church congregation with an iron fist, but in the face of federal wire fraud and identity theft, he was completely powerless. He stood frozen, watching his ultimate legacy crumble into a criminal record. But my mother was not frozen. The sight of her golden boy in handcuffs completely shattered whatever fragile grip she still had on reality. Vivian let out a visceral, agonizing scream that tore through her throat. She threw herself forward, crawling across the wet, slick tile floor, completely ignoring the shards of broken champagne glasses that scraped against her bare knees. Her expensive designer gown soaked up the dirty water, and her meticulously styled hair fell in wild strands around her face. The elegant Atlanta socialite was gone, leaving behind a frantic, desperate woman willing to sacrifice anything to protect her favorite child. She reached me and wrapped her arms tightly around my ankles, burying her tear-streaked face against my legs. "Selah, please," she sobbed, her voice hoarse and raw. "I am begging you on my hands and knees. Please do not do this to him. Tell your lawyer to drop the charges right now. Tell the police it was a misunderstanding. You can fix this, Selah. You can make it go away." I looked down at the woman who had birthed me, feeling a profound, hollow emptiness where a daughter love was supposed to be. She was not crying for the pain her son had caused me. She was not crying because he had stolen my identity or put my freedom at risk. She was only crying because her prized possession was finally facing a consequence. "You want me to lie to federal investigators, Mom?" I asked, my voice chillingly calm as I looked down at her. "You want me to commit perjury and say that I authorized a $500,000 loan from a shadow lending group so your son could buy a diamond ring for a woman he was actively scamming?" "You have billions of dollars, Selah," my mother wailed, her fingers digging painfully into my skin. "Sloan just said your company is worth $800 million. $500,000 is absolutely nothing to you. It is pocket change. You can pay the loan off tomorrow and write it off as a business expense. Nobody has to know. We can keep this entirely in the family." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Keep it in the family," I repeated, shaking my head. "Like how you kept it in the family when you and Dad mortgaged your retirement home to give him $300,000. Like how you kept it in the family when you told all your country club friends that I was a depressed college dropout answering phones while he was a self-made millionaire. You do not care about the family, Mom. You only care about him. He is your brother." My mother screamed, her desperation turning into a toxic, vicious demand. "He is a black man in America, Selah. You know what the criminal justice system does to our men. They will destroy him in prison. They will take away his future. You have the power to save him from that. You have the resources to protect him. You are his sister. You owe him protection." "He did not think about the system when he stole my social security number," I replied, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "He did not care about my future when he forged my name on federal lending documents. If Sloan Firm had audited that loan before today, the authorities would have come knocking on my door. I would have been the one facing federal charges for fraud. Did he protect me, Mom? Did he care if a black woman went to prison for his gambling debts?" My mother squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head violently as if refusing to hear the logic of my words. She tightened her grip on my ankles, her tears soaking through the fabric of my dress. "It is different," she sobbed blindly. You are strong, Selah. You have always been so tough and resilient. You can handle the hardship. But Trevon is fragile. He needs us. He is the only one who can carry on the family name. He is the only lifeblood of this family. If you let them take him away, you are destroying everything your father and I worked for. He is our only hope. The catering staff watched in stunned silence. Donovan stood beside me, his expression a mask of professional disgust. Sloane was watching my mother with a look of pure revulsion, clearly horrified by the depth of the enabling she was witnessing. I looked down at the top of my mother's head, processing the sheer audacity of her words. She was literally kneeling at the feet of a billionaire daughter, a woman who had built an empire entirely on her own, yet she was still calling the unemployed gambling addict in handcuffs the lifeblood of the family. I reached down and firmly grasped my mother's wrists. My grip was not gentle. I pried her fingers off my ankles one by one, stepping back so she was forced to look up at my face. I looked down at her, preparing to throw the exact words she had used to open this disastrous evening right back into her face. My mother tightened her grip around my legs, her tears staining the fabric of my dress. She looked up at me, her face twisted in a mask of absolute desperation. The woman who had spent my entire life treating me like a nuisance was now treating me like a savior, but it was only to rescue the son who had just bankrupted her. I looked down at her, feeling no pity, no guilt, no obligation. I reached down and firmly grasped my mother's wrists. My grip was not gentle. I pried her fingers off my ankles one by one, stepping back so she was forced to look up at my face. "The only lifeblood of this family?" I asked, my voice echoing off the stainless steel cabinets. "Is that what he is, Mom? Because less than an hour ago you stood on a stage in front of 300 of Atlanta's most elite socialites, church elders, and politicians. You held up a glass of champagne, and you announced to the entire room that God blessed you with Trevon." My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I did not let her. "You said that sometimes you and Dad wish you only had one child," I continued, my words falling like heavy stones in the silent kitchen. "You wished out loud that Trevon was your only offspring, because then your lives would be absolutely flawless. You publicly erased my existence while standing in a mansion that I own to elevate a son who was actively stealing from you. Selah, please." My mother wept, her hands reaching out for me again but falling short. "I was just talking. It was just a speech for Sloane family. You know I did not mean it. You know I love you. I know you love the idea of wealth," I corrected her, stepping further out of her reach. "I know you love the country club status and the front row pew at church, but you never loved me. If you loved me, you would have been horrified that your son stole my social security number to commit federal fraud. Instead, you are begging me to cover it up so he does not have to face the consequences." "Congratulations, Mom," I said, my tone dropping to a freezing whisper. "Your prayer was answered. As of tonight, you only have one child. You only have him." My mother let out another gut-wrenching wail, collapsing completely onto the wet floor. She covered her face, sobbing loudly as the reality of my words set in. I was done. The bank of Selah was closed, and the daughter she had treated like a scapegoat was officially gone. Desmond stepped forward, his face a mixture of rage and panic. He looked at the police officers who were now securing Trevon and reading him his Miranda rights. Then he looked at me, his eyes narrowing with a toxic paternal authority that no longer held any power over me. "You cannot do this, Selah," my father demanded, his voice shaking. "You cannot just walk away from your family. We share the same blood. We are your parents. You are acting like a cold-hearted stranger. What kind of black woman sends her own brother to the system? Do you know what they do to young black men in prison? You are betraying your own people." I turned my full attention to my father, letting his manipulative guilt trip wash over me without leaving a single mark. Do not dare weaponize my race or my womanhood to cover up his crimes. Dad, I warned, pointing a finger directly at his chest. The system did not forge my signature. The system did not gamble away your retirement home. Trevon did that. He made those choices. And you helped him do it by teaching him that he never had to be accountable for anything. He made a mistake, my father argued desperately. We can handle this internally. We can put him in rehab. We can fix his credit. You have the resources to make this right. I have the resources because I worked for them, I replied sharply. I built Aura while you were busy paying off his credit cards. I slept on a mattress on the floor for 2 years coding algorithms while you were buying him luxury car leases so he could look the part of a successful man. You want to talk about betraying our people, Dad? How about raising a black man who thinks it is acceptable to steal from a black woman who actually put in the work? Trevon let out a loud sob as the officers began to guide him toward the kitchen exit. Dad, do not let them take me, Trevon begged, dragging his feet against the tile. Mom, please do something. The officers ignored his pleading, pushing open the heavy double doors. The sudden influx of noise from the hallway signaled that the party outside had shifted from a celebration to a chaotic spectacle. My mother scrambled to her feet, chasing after the officers. Wait! You cannot take him through the main ballroom. She panicked, wiping her ruined makeup. The guests are still out there. The mayor is out there. Please take him through the loading dock. Do not let everyone see him in handcuffs. Even now, as her son was being arrested for multiple felonies, her primary concern was the optics. She was more terrified of the gossip than she was of the reality of her son's actions. One of the officers looked at my mother with a mixture of pity and annoyance. Mom, the loading dock is blocked by catering trucks. We are taking him out through the front entrance. Step aside. No, my mother shrieked, blocking the doorway. You will ruin our reputation. Our family will be a laughingstock. Donovan stepped forward, smoothly intervening before the officers could arrest my mother for obstruction. He placed a firm hand on the door, holding it open for the police. Your reputation was ruined the moment your son decided to play pretend with federal loan documents, Donovan said cleanly. The police have a job to do. I suggest you let them do it before I advise them to add obstruction of justice to the list of charges tonight. My father grabbed my mother's arm, pulling her out of the way. He watched helplessly as the officers marched Trevon out of the kitchen. The golden child, the flawless heir to the family legacy, was paraded through the hallway in steel handcuffs, weeping like a broken child. I stood beside Sloane, watching the culmination of 29 years of toxic enabling walk out the door. Sloane shook her head, a grim smile touching her lips. I have dealt with narcissistic founders and cutthroat hedge fund managers, Sloane murmured, keeping her eyes on the retreating figures, but your family takes the prize for absolute delusion. They really thought you would just open your checkbook and buy his freedom. They have been expecting me to pay for his existence since we were kids, I replied, turning to face her. They just never realized the price would eventually be this high. My father turned back to me, his eyes filled with a dark, venomous hatred. You destroyed this family today, Selah, he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. You stripped us of our dignity. You humiliated us in front of Atlanta elite. I hope your millions keep you warm at night because you have no family left. We are done with you. I looked at the man who had spent my entire life treating me like an afterthought. I felt a profound sense of liberation settling deep into my bones. You think this makes you powerful, Selah, my father demanded, taking a heavy step closer to me. His chest puffed out in a final, desperate display of patriarchal authority, a hollow attempt to regain control of a room that had entirely slipped from his grasp. You think handing your own flesh and blood over to the system is a victory? I did not hand him over. Dad, I replied, my voice cool and unbothered. His own actions did. Look at what you are doing, Desmond roared, pointing a trembling finger toward the hallway where the 2 police officers were currently reading Trevon his rights. You do not let white cops take your black brother away in handcuffs to ruin his legacy. You do not feed our men to a system designed to destroy them. We are supposed to protect our own. You are throwing him to the wolves and ruining his life forever. Do you have any idea how hard I worked to build the Blackwood name in this city? How much I sacrificed so my son could walk into rooms and command respect? I stared at the man who dared to use the very real struggles of our community as a shield for his son's pathetic criminality. The sheer audacity of his argument was suffocating, but I refused to let him manipulate the narrative. Do not you dare stand there and weaponize our race to defend a thief? I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. You want to talk about protecting black men, Dad? What about protecting black women? What about the black woman standing right in front of you who built a 9-figure tech empire from nothing while you were busy co-signing your son's delusions? He is your brother. My father insisted, his voice cracking with stubborn pride. He made a mistake, but he was trying to build a dynasty. He is a liability, I snapped back, refusing to let him breathe. You want to talk about the system destroying him? Let us talk about the system, Dad. If Sloan's auditors had caught that fraudulent loan before Donovan did, the federal government would have come for me. They would have frozen my corporate accounts, raided Aura's headquarters, and dragged me, a black female founder, into a federal courtroom for wire fraud. Would you have cared about the system then, Dad? Would you have thrown yourself in front of the police to protect me? My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. No, I answered for him, watching the truth drain the remaining defiance from his face. You would have let me take the fall if it meant keeping your golden boy out of trouble. You would have sacrificed me in a heartbeat just to keep up appearances at your golf club. You would have watched them put me in a cell, and you would have blamed me for not securing my identity properly. My mother was still weeping on the floor, but my father seemed paralyzed by the undeniable reality of my words. For years, he had paraded Trevon around Atlanta, introducing him to prominent pastors and local politicians, treating him like the crown prince of a kingdom that did not even exist. Meanwhile, he had hidden me away, ashamed that his daughter preferred coding in a hoodie over joining the right sorority and marrying a doctor. I was trying to build a legacy for this family, my father muttered, looking down at his expensive leather shoes. A family empire that people would respect. A legacy for the next generation. His legacy is laziness and deceit, I said, stepping right into his personal space, forcing him to look me in the eye. He has never built a single thing in his life except a mountain of debt and a trail of victims. You spent 32 years looking for a legacy in a son who only knew how to take. You handed him your retirement, your dignity, and your reputation, and he gambled it all away at a blackjack table. I paused, letting the silence stretch between us, making sure my next words would carve themselves into his memory forever. I was your legacy, Dad. I whispered, the absolute certainty of my words striking him like a physical blow. I was the one who actually had the brilliance, the drive, and the resilience to build the empire you always dreamed of. I was the one who possessed the true Blackwood work ethic. But you trampled on me because I was not the son you wanted. You looked right past a self-made billionaire because you were too busy polishing a piece of cheap brass, hoping it would turn into gold. So now you get to watch your actual legacy walk out the door while your fake one goes to prison. Donovan stood quietly beside me, his presence a solid wall of legal protection. Sloan watched my father with a look of clinical pity, recognizing the tragic comedy of a man who had bet his entire life on the wrong horse. My father seemed to age 10 years in a matter of seconds. His shoulders slumped, and the authoritative fire in his eyes was completely extinguished. The realization that he had discarded the very daughter who could have given him everything he ever wanted finally crushed the last of his arrogant spirit. He had nothing left to say. But the universe was not quite done delivering the consequences of their actions. Before my father could formulate a pathetic apology, before my mother could let out another agonizing sob, a new voice broke through the heavy tension of the kitchen. The venue manager, the same woman who had initially confronted Trevon about the declined credit card, practically sprinted through the swinging doors. She looked completely frantic, her tablet clutched tightly to her chest, her professional composure entirely shattered. "Mr. Blackwood?" She gasped, breathless and wide-eyed, looking directly at my father. "You need to get out to the grand foyer right now," "What is it?" my father snapped, annoyed by the sudden interruption, but clearly panicked by her tone. "Are the police causing a scene? Are they clearing the room?" "It is worse," the manager said, shaking her head frantically. "When the officers brought your son through the grand foyer, the string quartet stopped playing. The entire party stopped. Everyone saw him in handcuffs." "We know that," my mother wailed from the floor, hiding her face in her hands. "It is a total disaster. Our reputation in this city is ruined. What will the church members think?" "They are not just watching," the manager interrupted, her voice rising in sheer absolute panic. "They are recording it. Half the guests in the ballroom have their phones out. They are live streaming your son's arrest to social media right now." My mother let out a sound that was half gasp, half scream. "Live streaming." She repeated the words, stumbling out of her mouth, as if she could not comprehend them. "The church elders are out there. The mayor is out there. Desmond, do something." My father pushed past the venue manager, throwing open the heavy kitchen doors. The sound of the grand foyer hit us like a physical wave. It was not the polite murmur of high society mingling. It was the chaotic buzz of 300 people whispering, pointing, and holding up their glowing smartphone screens. Through the gap in the doors, I could see the flashes of camera phones illuminating the hallway as the police marched my brother toward the main entrance. His head was bowed, his shoulders shaking, but the digital footprint of his humiliation was already permanent. "Shut it down!" my father yelled at the manager, his voice cracking with sheer panic. "Cut the Wi-Fi, confiscate their phones. You have to stop them from recording my son." The manager looked at my father with utter disbelief. "Sir, I cannot confiscate the personal property of 300 guests," she said, her professional tone entirely gone. "Your son is being arrested for a felony in the middle of a private event. My staff is calling corporate right now to distance our venue from this scandal. You need to leave." Before my father could argue, the kitchen doors swung open again, pushing him back. A tall, distinguished white man with silver hair and a tailored charcoal suit stepped into the room. He was followed closely by a woman wearing diamonds that cost more than my parents' entire net worth. It was Sloane Father Harrison and her mother, Catherine. They moved with the quiet, terrifying authority of old Silicon Valley money. Harrison did not look frantic. He looked like a man who had just narrowly avoided stepping on a venomous snake. Sloane, Harrison said, looking directly at his daughter. "The car is waiting out back. Our security team is clearing a path so we do not have to walk through that circus in the foyer." Sloane nodded, picking up her designer clutch from the stainless steel counter. "I am ready," she said, her voice completely devoid of any emotion regarding the man she was supposed to marry today. My mother, seeing her ultimate meal ticket about to walk out the door, completely lost her mind. She threw herself in front of Harrison, blocking his path to the exit. "Harrison, please," my mother begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. "You have to understand. Trevon is a good man. He was just trying to provide for your daughter. He made a tiny financial mistake because he was intimidated by your family wealth. You cannot let her abandon him over a misunderstanding. We can fix this. Our families are supposed to merge today." Harrison looked down at my mother with a gaze so incredibly cold it made the industrial freezers feel warm. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Stealing $500,000 by forging federal lending documents is not a tiny financial mistake. Vivian, Harrison said, his words slicing through the room. "It is a felony. It is a... Your son is a con artist who targeted my daughter to drain our family trust. If my firm had not been so focused on expanding our southern portfolio, I would have caught his pathetic lies months ago. But he loves her," my mother wailed, clinging to the last desperate shred of her delusion. "He loves my bank accounts," Harrison corrected, stepping neatly around her. "And you love them too. Do not think I do not see exactly what this is. You enabled a criminal because you wanted a front row seat on my private jet. You are absolutely pathetic." My father stepped forward, His chest puffed out, trying to salvage whatever microscopic shred of dignity he had left. "You watch how you speak to my wife, Harrison. We are a proud family. We do not need your money." Harrison let out a short, dry laugh. "You are currently facing foreclosure." "Desmond?" he stated casually, dropping the final bomb on my parents' pride. "My investigative team pulled your public records 10 minutes ago while your son was crying on this floor. You are completely broke. You needed my money more than you need oxygen." My father's face completely collapsed. All the bluster, the arrogant patriarchal posturing, it vanished, leaving behind a terrified old man who had just been exposed as a complete fraud. Harrison turned his back on my parents, dismissing them entirely. He looked across the kitchen and locked eyes with me. The contempt in his face faded, replaced by a look of profound professional respect. He walked over to where I stood next to Donovan. "Selah," Harrison said, extending his hand. I shook it firmly, meeting his gaze. "I want to personally thank you," Harrison continued. "You could have let my daughter walk into a legal and financial nightmare. You could have let that parasite attach himself to our family just to get him out of your hair. Instead, you stepped up and surgically removed him. That takes serious backbone." "I protect my peace," I replied smoothly. "And I do not let scammers use my name to build their fake empires." Harrison smiled, nodding in agreement. "Sloan tells me your company Aura is the real owner of this estate. She also tells me you are closing a $50 million series around with her on Monday." "That is the plan," I said. "Make it 75 million, Harrison said, his voice echoing clearly in the quiet kitchen. "My personal fund is coming in on this deal too. Any founder who can handle a crisis like this without breaking a sweat is exactly who I want managing my capital. We are going to back Aura publicly. By next week, everyone in the tech industry will know your name, and they will know you have the full weight of our network behind you." "I appreciate the confidence, Harrison," I said, giving a polite nod. "My legal team will send over the revised term sheets tomorrow." Harrison turned to Sloan. "Let us go," he said. They walked toward the back exit of the kitchen, leaving my parents standing in the wreckage of their shattered dreams. The heavy metal doors closed behind the wealthy Silicon Valley family with a definitive thud. The silence that rushed back into the kitchen was heavy and suffocating. I watched my parents process what had just happened. The gears were slowly turning in their heads. They had not just lost their reputation tonight. They had not just watched their golden child get hauled off to jail for federal crimes. They had just watched the billionaire safety net they had been banking on for months literally walk out the back door and hand $75 million to the daughter they had treated like garbage. My mother slowly turned to look at me. Her eyes were completely empty, devoid of the arrogant spark that had defined her entire personality. The reality of her situation was finally crashing down on her. The country club was gone. The church prestige was gone. The son she worshipped was in a police cruiser, and the house she lived in was going up for auction. She looked at my designer dress. She looked at the iPad in my hand that controlled a tech empire, and then she looked at Donovan, my highly paid corporate attorney. She finally realized that the only person left in the universe who could save them from absolute destitution was the very person they had been trying to throw away all night. My father swallowed hard, his hands shaking at his sides. The terrifying truth dawned on both of them at the exact same moment. They were out of options, and they were completely at my mercy. "Selah," my mother whispered, taking a slow, hesitant step toward me, her voice trembling with a new kind of desperation. "Baby, please, we need to talk." I did not move a single muscle. I just watched her approach, taking in the absolute ruin of her carefully curated appearance. The woman who had spent my entire childhood telling me to stand up straight and fix my hair was now slouching like a defeated animal. Her designer gown was stained with kitchen water, and her heavy diamond earrings looked ridiculous against her tear-streaked face. "Do not call me baby mom," I said, my voice flat and unyielding. You lost the right to use pet names the moment you begged me to commit perjury for the man who stole my identity. My father stepped up beside her. His shoulders slumped, but his eyes still darting around as if searching for a magical loophole that would save his pride. Selah. Listen to reason, Desmond pleaded, trying to inject a tone of parental authority into a situation where he had absolutely none. Harrison is right. We are completely broke. Trevon drained the reverse mortgage and the bank has been sending notices for months. We hid them because we thought the wedding would bring in the capital to save the property. But now the wedding is off and Sloan family is gone. You are the only one who can fix this. I looked at my father, marveling at his sheer audacity. You want me to fix the mess you created to fund your golden boy gambling addiction? I asked. You have to, my mother cried out, reaching for my hand. But I took a deliberate step back, causing her to grasp at empty air. You just secured $75 million from Harrison. Your company is worth nearly $1 billion. Paying off the $90,000 we owe in back payments is nothing to you. It is literal pocket change. You could swipe your card right now and save our home. You could do it right now and end this nightmare. Save your home. I repeated the words, tasting bitter. You mean the home where you gave Trevon the master suite while I slept in the cramped room over the garage? The home where you hosted lavish Sunday dinners and told the entire congregation I was a failure because I did not have a husband. The home where you hung his fake college degree on the wall while throwing my business plans in the trash. That home. My father's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. This is not the time to be petty about childhood grievances, Selah. We are talking about your parents being thrown out onto the street. We are talking about the destruction of our legacy in this city. My reputation at the church will be destroyed. There is no legacy, Dad, I told him cleanly. There is only a mountain of debt and a criminal record. And as for your home, you are severely underestimating the reality of your situation. I turned to Donovan, who smoothly opened his leather briefcase and pulled out a single crisp sheet of paper. He handed it to me, and I held it up for my parents to see. The catering staff, who were still huddled in the corner, watched with wide eyes as the final nail was driven into my family coffin. This is not just a warning notice from the bank, I explained, watching their eyes widen as they tried to read the legal print from a few feet away. The grace period expired 3 weeks ago. The bank is not asking for $90,000 in back payments anymore. They accelerated the loan when Trevon missed the final deadline after blowing his last advance in Vegas. They are demanding the entire balance of the mortgage immediately. My mother let out a strangled gasp, leaning heavily against the stainless steel prep counter. The entire balance, she choked out, her chest heaving. But that is over $400,000. We do not have that. We do not have anything close to that. I know you do not, I replied. And because you do not have it, the bank has already moved forward. This document is a notice of public auction. Your house is going on the foreclosure block this Saturday morning at 9 sharp. The color completely drained from my father's face, leaving him looking pale and hollow. This Saturday, he whispered, his voice breaking. No, that is impossible. They have to give us more time. We have lived in that house for 25 years. We raised you there. We hosted every family reunion there. You cannot let a bank take it. The bank does not care about your memories. Dad, I said coldly. They only care about their money. The money you willingly handed to a parasite who threw it away on roulette tables. Vivian dropped to her knees again, but this time she did not try to grab my ankles. She simply collapsed under the crushing weight of her own ruin. Selah, you cannot let them take our house, she wailed, burying her face in her trembling hands. Where will we go? We have no savings left. Your father's pension is gone because we cashed it out for Trevon. We will be homeless. Please, I am begging you as your mother. Just pay off the balance. Buy the house from the bank. You can afford it. You have to save us. I looked down at my parents. The pillars of the Atlanta Black elite. The people who had demanded excellence from me while starving me of affection. The people who were perfectly willing to let me take the fall for federal wire fraud just 10 minutes ago so their precious son could avoid accountability. They expected me to rescue them simply because we shared the same blood. I am not paying a single dime to save that house, I said, my voice echoing with absolute finality in the silent kitchen. My father's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief and returning anger. You cannot be serious, Desmond yelled, stepping toward me before Donovan shifted his weight, blocking his path. You are a billionaire. You are going to let your own parents be thrown onto the street over $400,000. It is a drop in the bucket for you. You make that in a day. It is not about the money, Dad, I explained, speaking slowly so every word would carve itself into his mind permanently. It is about the fact that you chose your pride over your daughter. You chose a fake venture capitalist over a real one. You funded his delusions while mocking my reality. You had a daughter who could have given you the world and you treated her like garbage. I am your mother, Vivian sobbed, looking up at me with terrified, pleading eyes. You owe us respect. You owe us loyalty. We gave you life. I owed you nothing the moment you told me to leave through the back door, I countered. You sat there and watched him try to destroy my life. You begged me to commit perjury for him. You made your choice, Mom. You bet your entire future on Trevon. Now you get to collect your winnings. Desmond clenched his fists, his whole body shaking with impotent rage as he realized his intimidation tactics were completely useless. You are a monster, Selah. You are cold and ruthless. This is why you have no one. This is why you will always be alone. You are an embarrassment to everything a family is supposed to stand for. I smiled. It was not a happy smile, but a cold, calculated expression of total victory. I adjusted my clutch and looked at the two people who had spent my entire life trying to break my spirit. You said I was the embarrassment of this family, I stated, my voice dropping to a chilling whisper. Let us see how this family survives without me cleaning up your trash. I did not wait for my father to formulate another pathetic excuse. I did not wait for my mother to shed another manipulative tear. I simply turned on my heel and walked away. My designer heels clicked against the wet tile of the catering kitchen, a steady, rhythmic sound that felt like a countdown to their absolute ruin. The heavy oak doors swung open as I stepped back into the grand hallway of the Buckhead estate. The atmosphere had completely shifted. The string quartet was gone. The polite chatter of the Atlanta elite had been replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. Hundreds of guests were standing around, clutching their champagne flutes, staring toward the main entrance. I followed their gaze. The two police officers were marching Trevon through the massive front doors. His head was bowed, his shoulders hunched. The flashing red and blue lights from the squad cars parked in the circular driveway cut through the warm ambient lighting of the mansion. The harsh strobe effect illuminated the sheer terror on my brother's face. The golden child, the untouchable heir to the family legacy, was being shoved into the back of a police cruiser like a common street criminal. Behind me, I could hear the agonizing sounds of my parents realizing their world was over. My mother burst through the kitchen doors, her ruined dress dragging across the marble floor. She let out a loud, gut-wrenching wail that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. It was not a dignified cry. It was the raw, ugly sound of a woman watching her ultimate status symbol being hauled away to a federal holding cell. She stumbled toward the open front doors, reaching her hands out into the cool night air, but the police cruiser was already pulling away. My father followed her, but his steps were slow and heavy. He did not shout at the police. He did not try to invoke his church titles or his community standing. The notice of public auction I had left on the prep counter had completely broken him. Desmond slumped against the heavy wooden doorframe, watching the taillights of the police car disappear down the long private driveway. His chest heaved, but his eyes were empty. He was a man who had spent his entire life building a kingdom of lies, and now he was standing in the rubble with absolutely nothing left to his name. There was no cinematic moment of reconciliation. No tearful hugs or sudden realizations of my worth. I did not feel the urge to run back and comfort the woman who had birthed me. I did not feel the need to rescue the man who had always viewed my independence as a threat to his masculinity. They had made their choices over 32 long years. They had watered a dead plant, expecting it to bear fruit, while actively salting the earth where I stood. They were finally reaping exactly what they had sown. Donovan walked beside me, his presence a silent wall of legal protection against the stares of the remaining guests. People parted like the Red Sea as we moved through the foyer. Women in expensive gowns and men in tailored suits whispered behind their hands, but no one dared to step in my path. They had all witnessed the destruction of the family image. They all knew that the quiet daughter they had ignored all night was the one holding the executioner's sword. I stepped out into the cool Atlanta night air. The humidity was thick, but it felt incredibly refreshing against my skin. The property manager, the one Trevon had tried to intimidate earlier, was standing near the valet podium. She gave me a small, respectful nod as I approached. I nodded back, a silent acknowledgement between two women who knew exactly how to handle entitled men. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. Donovan opened the rear door for me, and I slid into the plush leather seat. He closed the door, stepping into the front passenger side. The driver put the car in gear, and we smoothly pulled away from the mansion. I looked out the tinted window as we drove down the sweeping driveway. I could see the silhouette of my mother still collapsed on the front steps, her wails fading into the distance. My father was just a shadow standing over her, unable to fix the mess he had actively created. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window and took a deep, steadying breath. The heavy, crushing weight of family expectation that I had carried on my shoulders since childhood was completely gone. The desperate need to prove my worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding me had vanished. I did not feel angry anymore. I did not feel sad. I just felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I thought about the cultural expectations that had kept me tethered to them for so long. The endless sermons about honoring your mother and father, regardless of how they treated you. The toxic loyalty demanded by a community that often confuses enduring abuse with showing strength. Black women are always expected to be the unconditional healers, the financial safety nets, the silent pillars holding up crumbling foundations. We are told to pray away the disrespect, to turn the other cheek, when our achievements are minimized, to simply swallow our pride to protect the image of the Black family. But keeping a toxic family intact is not a badge of honor. It is a prison sentence. I refuse to serve another day in their prison. I refuse to let my hard-earned wealth become a bandage for their severe generational dysfunction. They had worshipped the ground Trevon walked on because he was the male heir, the one carrying the family name. They believed his potential was a given, while my success was just a lucky accident. They banked everything on his fraudulent charm and completely ignored the quiet, relentless grind that actually builds an empire. Karma is not always a mystical force that balances the scales of the universe. Sometimes karma is simply a boundary firmly set and strictly enforced. Sometimes karma is letting people drown in the very ocean they tried to push you into. My parents had spent my entire life trying to shrink me so my brother could look taller. But you cannot shrink a self-made woman who built her own table when she was denied a seat at yours. As the SUV merged onto the highway, leaving the exclusive Buckhead neighborhood behind, I closed my eyes. The chaotic noise of the engagement party, the flashing police lights, the desperate begging of my parents, they all faded into the background. Tomorrow morning, the banking officials would begin the foreclosure process on my parents' house. Tomorrow morning, Trevon would wake up in a holding cell facing federal charges that carried decades of prison time. Tomorrow morning, my mother and father would have to face their church congregation and explain why their perfect family was entirely bankrupt. But tomorrow morning, I would wake up in my penthouse completely free from their toxicity. I would go to my office, sit at the head of my boardroom, and sign a $50 million deal. I had cleaned up their trash for the very last time exactly 1 month later. The warm, humid air of Atlanta had been entirely replaced by the crisp, sunny breeze of Silicon Valley. I sat at the head of a massive mahogany conference table inside a glass-walled boardroom that overlooked the sprawling California Tech campus. Across from me sat Sloan, looking effortlessly commanding in a tailored white blazer. Between us sat a stack of legal documents finalizing the $75 million series of funding round that would officially take Aura global. Donovan stood by the window, reviewing the final transfer confirmations on his tablet. The energy in the room was electric, but perfectly controlled. It was the quiet, formidable power of two women who had completely bypassed the traditional boys' club to build an empire on our own terms. "Your legal team was brutal but highly efficient," Sloane said, leaning back in her leather chair and tapping a gold pen against the table. "They fought for every decimal point on that valuation. I have to admit, I respect the ruthless approach." "I only hire sharks," I replied smoothly, signing my name on the final signature line of the merger agreement. "And I only partner with them, too." Sloane let out a genuine laugh. It was a far cry from the tense, suffocating atmosphere of that catering kitchen in Atlanta. She took the contract from my hands and added her own signature, binding her venture capital firm to my technology platform. To think a month ago, I was agonizing over floral arrangements for a wedding, to a man who did not even know how to balance a checkbook, Sloane mused, shaking her head as she slid the documents into a sleek leather portfolio. He really thought he could play both of us. He looked at two highly successful women and only saw stepping stones for his own fabricated ego. He made the classic mistake of underestimating women who operate in silence, I told her, leaning forward and resting my arms on the table. Men like him are so obsessed with being the loudest voice in the room that they never notice who actually owns the building. He thought because I did not brag about my net worth at Sunday dinner that I was an easy target. He thought because you were a wealthy white woman from a prominent family, you would be an easy mark to fund his gambling addiction. We were the absolute wrong targets. Sloane agreed, a sharp predatory smile touching her lips. My father still talks about the look on your face when you pulled up that property management dashboard. He said it was the most ruthless corporate execution he had ever witnessed in his entire career. "I protect what is mine," I stated simply. "My company, my peace of mind, and my future. I spent my entire childhood shrinking myself so my brother could look taller to my parents. I am done making myself small so mediocre men can feel large." We raised our glasses of sparkling water in a silent toast to dodging a massive bullet and closing a monumental deal. The partnership was going to dominate the luxury real estate market, and we both knew it. The heavy glass door of the boardroom opened quietly, interrupting our celebration. My executive assistant stepped into the room looking slightly hesitant. She was holding a single stamped manila envelope. "Sorry to interrupt the meeting, Selah," my assistant said, walking over to my side of the table, "but this was just delivered by the mail courier. It was marked urgent and personal. The screening department flagged it because of the return address." She placed the envelope on the mahogany table. I looked down at the cheap, coarse paper. The return address was stamped with the official seal of a federal correctional facility in Georgia. The sender name was printed in smeared black ink. Trevon Blackwood. Sloane watched me from across the table, raising an elegant eyebrow. "Let me guess," she said, taking a slow sip of her water. "He suddenly found God in a holding cell and wants you to pay for his legal fees and his commissary snacks. Or maybe he wants to apologize and remind you that family means everything." I stared at the envelope, feeling absolutely nothing. No residual anger, no lingering sorrow, no curiosity about what pathetic excuses or desperate pleas he had scribbled onto those pages. The umbilical cord of toxic family loyalty had been permanently severed the night he tried to steal my identity. I did not even bother opening the flap. I stood up from the leather executive chair, picked up the envelope, and walked over to the industrial shredder sitting quietly in the corner of the boardroom. I hovered the envelope over the feed slot. "He can keep his apologies," I said softly, dropping the letter into the machine. The shredder whirred to life, its steel blades instantly grinding my brother's desperate words into meaningless confetti. The noise was brief and satisfying, completely erasing whatever manipulation he was trying to send across the country. I turned my back on the machine and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the brilliant blue California sky. The dust had finally settled back in Atlanta, and the fallout had been absolute. Desmond and Vivian ignored the foreclosure notices until the sheriff deputies physically knocked on their front door and forced them out. The sprawling house with the manicured lawn, the swimming pool, and the grand dining room where they used to humiliate me was auctioned off to the highest bidder to cover the debts Trevon had left behind. My parents now live in a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood they used to roll their car windows up when driving through. My father, at 60 years old, is working the early morning shift as a greeter at a local hardware store, scanning receipts to pay off the residual gambling debts the bank held them liable for. My mother, the woman who looked down on my customer service job, now spends her evenings sitting in a cubicle doing outbound telemarketing for minimum wage. The church congregation they sacrificed everything to impress completely abandoned them the moment the scandal hit the local news. Their country club memberships were revoked. Their elite friends stopped returning their calls. Trevon took a plea deal to avoid a public trial that would have exposed the full humiliating extent of his gambling addiction. He is currently serving a 10-year federal sentence for wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. The golden child, the flawless heir to the Blackwood legacy, is spending the prime of his life eating tray food and wearing a numbered uniform. I turned away from the window and looked back at the boardroom table where the $75 million contract sat waiting to be filed. I had built my empire on my own terms. I had survived their abuse, their financial manipulation, and their relentless attempts to break my spirit. I owned my company, I owned my narrative, and I owned my destiny, completely free from the chains of their toxic expectations. They wished they only had one child. In the end, they got exactly what they asked for, a failure sitting in a jail cell.